Alrighty. Let's see. Hello. Welcome to the Creative Control Room Podcast pre-show. I hope I'm live. Double checking if I'm live. Looks like I'm live. Awesome. This is the portion of the show you will not hear in the audio version of the show. This is the pre-show where we go around and do all our systems checks, make sure everything is up and running, looking good, working fine. So that's what you're here for. Just kind of hang out for a little bit, go through all the stuff, and make sure we're up and running. So we check the Twitters now, or we checked Facebook. Now we're checking Twitter. We are up and running there as well. I live stream, by the way, every week on Facebook, Twitter, aka Periscope, Twitch, and obviously YouTube as well. All right, so we are up and running on the live streams. Fantastic. Let's go through now, check audio. Pop this up a little bit here. Very good. Let's check our camera angles. Camera 2. Camera 3. All right, looking good there. Check our animation here. There we go. Okay, that looks good. Lights are all on. I'm going to start recording now on the Rodecaster Pro. And I believe with that, we should be, oh, there goes Twitch. Twitch is up and running. Awesome. So we should be good to go. Let's wet the whistle here. What is this? Episode number 77? Technically episode number 2 of the Creative Control Room podcast. Excuse me. Okay. Everything looks good. Let's check. No dropped frames. The speed test prior to going live looked great. So I think we are good to go. We have a lot to talk about today. And so let's just get into it. And, okay. Let's make sure I can do the intro here. Check, check, check. All right, here we go. Hello, and welcome to episode number 77 of the Creative Control Room podcast, formerly the Hafey Digital Podcast. This is a show for creators, makers, and doers where my goal is to help you make to the max. My name is Ryan. I'm your operator, and in this episode, we're talking about 6 tips to unlock your creative potential, and we still don't have an intro yet, so we're going to skip right by that, and I'm going to tell you, if you are new here, I talk about all things content creation, photography, video creation, FPV, drone flying occasionally, podcasting, live streaming, all those types of things, and this is where I kind of drop my knowledge on those subjects, as well as document the different things and projects that I happen to be working on at the time. So if you're into any of that, now would be a great time to hit that subscribe button wherever you happen to be watching or listening, and follow me on social media at Ryan Hafey on Instagram and Twitter. Feel free to swing by, ask me a question, or just say what's up. I'm always happy to have a conversation. Robert on the live stream as usual. What's up, Robert? How you doing with the Never Call Me Again podcast? So, yes, no intro yet for the new podcast. Again, for any new listeners or viewers, I just rebranded. This is the second episode of the rebranded podcast, but it's still a continuation of the previous podcast, which was called the Hafey Digital Podcast. Content and everything still the same, but I felt like a name change is going to help take this podcast to the next level potentially. I never thought Hafey, well, no, not, I wouldn't say never, but after a while it became pretty clear that the name Hafey Digital Podcast doesn't really tell you a whole lot about what the podcast is about. So I wanted to get some new colors. I wanted to get some new branding, and try to mold the name a little bit more about what it is that I do here on the show. So, and like I mentioned, it's all things content creation, or at least based around that for the most part. But so we don't have an intro because the intro is just, to be honest, not ready. I ran into some issues. I did play around in After Effects this week. I still, in my mind, can't I can't vision what the intro will look like yet. So I'm still playing around in After Effects, kind of moving some different elements around, seeing what might look cool. I want to do something probably a little bit shorter than the previous intro that I had. Something maybe more impactful. But originally what I was trying to do, and let me open the logo. I mean, you can see the logo in the lower right-hand corner of the screen as you're watching it. But just to give you, let's see, let me bring this up here. I'll open it here. So this is the logo that I came up with. And I mentioned it last week, but this is intended to kind of look a couple different ways depending on how you look at it. The Rubik's Cube, yes, is solved, Robert. Occasionally, if I'm sitting here bored, I'll fix it. But so this is meant to look like two things. It looks like two C's kind of facing each other, the letter C, creative control. And then the other is to look kind of like a room, as if you were looking down into it, like, four walls, basically. And what I originally wanted to do was find a way to turn this into a 3D, essentially a 3D room that I could rotate around in After Effects. Now I can figure out how to take this as a 2D logo and then give it some three-dimensional depth in After Effects, but that's not what I want, because then that just kind of makes it look like this, but thick. I wanted to try to make this into a rotating room, essentially, that you can look, that I could kind of pan around with the camera. And I just had some challenges doing that. I'm not well versed enough yet with the 3D options and using cameras inside of After Effects, so that's creating a challenge. So what I'm thinking I may do up until I can figure that out is just at least come up with something that I can use and maybe just play around with the more simpler 3D version of this and animate something in. I don't know. I'll keep toying with it. For me, it's going to probably just be easiest to get into After Effects and poke around for a little while until I can figure something out. So that's the story on the intro. Quick boxing update for my boxing fans out there, because the past couple days have been very interesting in the boxing space. Obviously, there was a big fight yesterday on ESPN for the undisputed 140-pound world champion, Josh Taylor and Jose Ramirez. I was only able to catch a couple rounds of that, but a lot of chatter on that. But the big news, at least in my space, is first of all, we've got Deontay Wilder versus Tyson Fury, the trilogy fight coming up. It sounds like in July in Las Vegas is what I'm hearing. And also Manny Pacquiao and Errol Spence went on social media the other day to announce that they will be fighting each other. So that's a big one. That's going to be August 21st, at least as of currently. That's a massive fight, and looks like I may have the great privilege of being there for that. So I'm super excited for that. But yeah, big stuff coming in boxing, and then there's even more potentially big fights. It looks like that could be coming down the pipe before the end of the year. So this summer is going to be a good one for the sport of boxing. Anyway, I just wanted to throw that out there because I was kind of excited about that over the last couple of days. So let's get into today's topic. And today's topic is how to unlock your creative potential. And I kind of toiled as to whether or not I wanted to do an episode like this. I'm not usually a huge fan of the listicle style podcast, and also especially I'm always drawn in by videos or content that's kind of geared around how to expand your creativity, but a lot of it is very cookie cutter. A lot of it is seems like they just did a Google search for, hey, here's a list of things you can do to get creative, and then kind of regurgitate that. I didn't want to do that. But kind of leading into this, I realized that I never really sat down to think about where I get my creative inspirations from, or what are my go-tos when it comes to, being able to generate good ideas and then be able to spring out, create content from that. And I don't know, maybe it's different for everyone, but for me, when I come across a good idea, I think of it as like, it's just when you see in those Office movies, like Office Space where they just plop down a pile of papers on your desk. That's kind of how it works for me. I think when it comes to ideas, it's like ideas are always passing through my head, but most of them are just bad. They're just, they'll come in, they'll pop in, I'll sort of disregard them or, whatever. I'll kind of take a quick glimpse and then say, all right, move along. I'm done with you. You don't bring me any value at this point. But what I will say is that when I come across an idea that has some legs, at least in my opinion, they tend to flourish in my brain. They tend to grow very quickly. It's kind of like building blocks. I'll get this little single Lego brick that kind of catches my attention. And then if I feel like I could build off of it, I can usually do so very quickly. It's just this Lego brick would be good here, and then this would be good here. And before you know it, this idea that I've kind of attached to has already sort of morphed into something that's, a little bit more actionable than how it was when it first entered my mind. So, the trick, I guess, in that is just being able to pinpoint where, which ideas are good and which ones which ideas are worth spending time on. And that's, we won't be talking about that a ton today, because that's going to be different for everyone. But for me, it's more of a feeling. It's like when I hit an idea that I think is going to work, I sort of know it instantly, and my mind goes to work right away on building that idea out. But where do these ideas come from? And Robert chimed in with a comment here, said the best ideas in presentation are the ones that inspire you to think on your own, that flourish. Flourish is exactly what I mean. He said what I was thinking. That's awesome. Yeah, the best ones you just kind of feel it, and you're able to build off of them. But where do those ideas come from? How do you collect them? What are some of the sources of creative inspiration, at least for me? So this is my list of things that I do or that I turn to when I'm trying to come up with ideas, or if I'm out of ideas and I just need a new idea, whatever it may be. This is my list here. What's up, Mark? Mark in the chat said, when an idea like that comes into mind, I find it pretty easily takes over my mind, and I'm working on it all the time. Exactly. That's another way to say exactly what I was thinking. It sort of pops in, it sort of demands your attention, and then you're off to the races. So let's get into my list here. And so again, these are six tips that I have, or 6 ways that I go about getting my, finding my own creative inspiration. So the first is myself, meaning my old work. I've talked to people, and I've seen, a lot of artists and stuff that will say once they complete some work, their own work, they just kind of move on. It's like, okay, this piece is done. They set it aside and they move on to the next thing. And then there are others who will go back and critique their work and sort of build off of that. I'm in that camp. So if I finish a video that I think I did really well on, or if there's a set of photos, typically, if after a boxing match, if I take some photos, I will look back at my photos a lot. And I'm doing that not to admire my own work, but to be able to build off of it. So when, if it's a video, I'll watch it a bunch of times, not necessarily in a row, but I will revisit it frequently. And typically speaking, in a way that's almost torturing myself, because I'm watching these videos back and I'm thinking, oh, could have done that different. Oh, could have done that different. So in a way, I'm sort of, I don't know. I'm putting myself down in a way, but what it's allowing me to do, or at least the way that I'm rationalizing it, is it's giving me building blocks for the next video that I'm going to do that may be similar to this one. So, I'm kind of making mental notes. It's like, oh, I could have really done that. That would have been a cool thing to do. Maybe this time I could have cut here or cut there. And these are all mental notes that I'm taking, so that next time I'm working on a similar piece, I can kind of refer back to that. But, if you've got a body of work already, go back and look at some of the things you've done. You may have forgotten about a lot of the things that you've done in years past, and then you might go back and look at something and be like, oh yeah, I remember when I used to do that. That was a lot of fun. I really like how that turned out. I'm going to try to do more of that, or reintroduce that type of style back into the work that I'm doing now. That's number one. Number two, and social media. That's number two. Getting on social media, flipping through whatever maybe Facebook, Twitter, and you can love or hate this one, but it is what it is. People every single day are getting on social media to share stuff about themselves or about their work. And oftentimes, especially if you follow a lot of really cool people, you're going to get people that post really cool stuff, and that's going to inspire you, or that's going to, give you, it might spark a creative idea in yourself. There's a good book that I should read again because it's been a while since I've read it, but it's by Austin Kleon called Steal Like an Artist. And the whole concept really of the book is that nothing is original. Every artist that ever existed has built off of artists that came before them. And everyone gets creative inspirations from everything, but mostly, almost exclusively things that already exist. So of course that doesn't mean go find your favorite artist and then just rip everything that they're doing and steal what they're doing. Like, no, when you create your own style, you're picking and choosing from a bunch of different creative inspirations. So if you take some creative inspiration from this one artist that you like, you're not stealing their style. You're not stealing what they're doing. You're simply incorporating that into your bag of tricks, basically. But social media, I find, a lot of it, yes, is a lot of mindless scrolling as you're just going through your feed and you're seeing random social media posts. But if you can kind of train yourself to pay attention and keep an eye on what you're actually looking at, you'd be surprised the kinds of ideas that you can generate through that. Let's see, Mark Perry, that right there is the reason I subscribed. Almost every video I watch from you prompts a bunch of ideas in my head. Oh, thanks, Mark. Appreciate that. Appreciate it. So yeah, number one, my own work. Number two, social media. Number three, tutorials. I don't know how many times. I mean, look, if someone's going to be willing to share, and I make a lot of tutorials myself, and this is at least my intention when I make tutorials. If I'm going to be willing to share knowledge, I'm going to do so with the intention of getting other people to, put that to use. So if I'm, so you might feel guilty on occasion if you're watching a tutorial of some kind and it's like, oh, hey, here's a cool little transition that you can do. Like maybe I feel like this sometimes because I'm the kind of person where I don't like using LUTs or presets that you would go and buy from someone else. I like the idea of creating everything from scratch on my own. This logo, all that kind of stuff. I could have gone to Fiverr. I could have gone to Fiverr and had an intro animation by now of some kind. But I don't want to do that because it takes away from the entire purpose of really what this podcast is, which is about growth and sort of expanding skills. But I do look at a lot of tutorials because that's how you learn how to do stuff you don't know how to do. So whether it's from tutorials that you go and search out, or maybe you just have a list of subscriptions on YouTube and something pops up in your subscription feed, just consume as much of that as you can, because that's all just, again, additional tricks to go into your bag. And even if it doesn't give you a full-fledged idea of okay, watching a tutorial and I've thought of this new project that I can do, it may not give you that, but it could give you little bits and pieces that you can incorporate into a project that you're already working on to take it up to the next level and give it that, little extra oomph, I guess you could say. So tutorials. Consume those often. This next one, something everyone should be doing. If you're not utilizing like your notes app in your phone, or maybe even carrying around a little notebook and pen or something to keep in your pocket, you should be. I like the idea of, in fact, I could probably, let's see here. Watch. I like the idea of carrying around some kind of a notebook and, just sort of, there's another one in here that I can't get out at the moment. But anyway, the point is I have a lot of these notebooks because I've thought many times, like, it would be great just to like have a notebook with me at all times. And if I have an idea, I can just pull the notebook out. But I can't even get this freaking notebook back in here. But practically speaking, at least for me, it's just not that feasible. I mean, I still use notebooks for some things. Okay. I'm just going to have to deal with that later. But that's kind of getting away from the point. The point that I'm trying to make with this is just, again, it takes some time to get yourself in the mindset to do this. But, you know, it's good to get into the habit of just thinking and like being observant. And that's actually, you know, that's another tip. So I don't want to get too much into that. But if something strikes you or an idea comes across or you're doing any of the other tips on this list and something piques your interest, write it down. Because if you find yourself in, you know, a situation where you're just completely out of ideas, no matter what you try, you can't formulate a good thought in your brain. You have this list now of it's like, what kind of video am I going to make next week? I need to work on something. I need to express something creatively. What can I do? I don't have any ideas. Boom. You've got, over time, you're going to have, and I've done episodes on this show. Actually, a lot of them are in Evernote now, but I've done episodes on this show where I've gone through my lists of just ideas that I've jotted down over time. It's sort of, and these could be ideas that have been a couple years old, and then I'll go back and sort of review them and determine whether or not, like, oh, that was a stupid idea, or hey, oh, I forgot about that, but that's actually not a bad idea. So keeping a running list and going back and revisiting it from time to time. You know, again, we have lots of thoughts in our heads at all times, and it's easy to forget a lot of the specifics and a lot of the things that you think of that, you know, in the moment sounded like amazing ideas. You put it on the shelf, and then a couple months down the road, you forget about it. So write these things down, keep a running list. I like using Evernote or the Notes app on my phone, and just refer back to it often. I like to think of this as kind of like a creative insurance policy. You're making occasional deposits or payments, you know, anytime that you put a new idea into this creative insurance policy. And then you know, if you need it, you make your withdrawals. I guess you could think of it as a bank as well if you wanted to, but it's handy in a time of need, just like insurance is, I guess. So there's that one. Next up, this is something that I began to do. I mean, I guess, you know, when I first started getting into content creation in general, it was with photography. And, you know, if anyone listening, if it's the same for you, you may have felt the same thing where, you know, when you really start getting into photography and you become super interested, like, photography is one of those things where, like, when you start to really get into it, you get really excited to go shoot new things. I've kind of gotten past that now. Like, I would still love to just go out on a weekend and shoot some astrophotography. And obviously I still love shooting boxing. But I don't quite have the desire to just kind of go exploring and adventure seeking and bringing my camera with me. I would like to be that person. I'm just not anymore, I guess, just because my creative interests have expanded a little bit. But kind of getting off topic there. But when it comes to photography, one of the things that it sort of inadvertently trained me to do outside of just, you know, holding a camera, taking pictures, is to observe things as a photographer. And this can work as a videographer as well. Like, you know, if you picture the kind of stereotypical director looking through a frame that they make with their fingers. Well, that's real. You know, when you're a director, when you're a photographer, even when you're not taking photographs or taking video, you're still sort of always looking around and being observant and seeing, like, you know, how that would be a cool picture, or, oh, I bet I could make a really fun composition out of this or that. You're always sort of get into that mindset. So think like a videographer, think like a photographer, and always just kind of be observant of what's around you, be more mindful of what's going on around you. And, you know, just be mindful of that at all times. It's really helpful. And even if you're not a photographer, go get a point and shoot and practice with that a little bit. You'd be surprised how differently you see the world and observe things around you when you sort of dedicate yourself to taking photos and, and doing those things. So give it a try. It's helpful. It just sort of shifts your mindset and makes you look for things a little bit more closely and sort of, again, just be more observant. So that was number 5. And finally, this one may not be for everyone, but I get a lot of creative ideas from different mindfulness practices. I try to do these as often as I can. I'm not always super consistent with them, but things like meditation, journaling, going for walks. I'm a bath guy, so I'll take baths a few times a week and just sort of try to. Oftentimes, I just sit there on my phone for most of it, but I will try to at least take some time to just sit back, maybe put on some music, whatever, and just close my eyes and be one with your thoughts. The more often you can do that, we all know everyone has a phone. We're occupied and just being interrupted by things constantly throughout the day, to where everything that's around us is just sort of dictating what we're thinking at any given time. But if you can stop those impulses and stop yourself from relying on external stimulation in order to keep yourself entertained or occupied, if you can hold off on that for a little bit, you'd be surprised what just kind of pops in your mind, especially with meditation. Like the goal of meditation is, obviously you're going to have thoughts coming in and out of your mind at all times. An analogy I hear that's helpful when thinking about, what you should do when you're meditating is, imagine you're sitting at a train station and trains are just going by left and right. And those are your thoughts. And your goal is to not get on any of those trains. But you're not, without realizing it, you're going to get on a train every now and then. And then the goal at that point is then to realize, oh, shoot, I'm on this train. I'm not supposed to be on this train. And then you get back off and you go sit on that bench where you're watching all the trains go by. So the goal is to just kind of let the trains pass as much as possible. And that forces your brain to find its own ways to keep itself occupied and to entertain itself. So naturally, you're going to just get more and more ideas flooding into your brain. And the more you sit there and pay attention to them, you realize, wow, there's a lot going on up there that I don't really give enough credit to, or that I don't give enough attention to. And you end up just generating lots of great ideas about that out of that. So have a little notebook, have your running list of content ideas next to you and ready to go. And then if you find yourself while doing any of these things, I love walks, taking the dog for a walk. That's a great way to just kind of be one with your thoughts. But your brain is more of an idea and thought generation machine than you might think. You just have to give yourself time and allow your mind to be able to do that. And this obviously goes a little bit counter to my point earlier about social media, using social media to generate ideas. But yeah, I mean, you can get creative inspirations from many different sources. Robert says again, as a creator, I watch less YouTube because I want my influence and ideas to be more organic and less influenced by what I see other people doing. That's a good point, and kind of goes back to what I mentioned earlier. Like I'm not the kind of person who likes to I don't like to take what other people have made, again, like, where it's presets or LUTs or sort of pre-made animations and things like that. I'm not a huge fan of doing those because I feel like I'm giving up too much of myself. Like I'm not putting enough of myself into that work. I want what I make to be mine, and I feel like when I'm using presets and things, it's not mine. But again, contrary to that, going back to my point on watching tutorials and things, I get a lot of creative inspirations from those, and I've incorporated a lot of things that I've learned in tutorials into my work. So, I mean, as far as being influenced by others, you mentioned you want your ideas to be more organic, but you got to kind of define what organic is. Is organic to you? Does that mean, again, just coming from nowhere? Because, I would push back on that a little bit and say that, well, ideas don't just come from anywhere. Ideas are going to come from experiences and from things that you've observed and experienced over time. So you may have seen a tutorial or a video or something on YouTube a few months ago that kind of pops back into your head a few months later, and you're like, oh, okay, I could probably do something based off of that. So it's kind of how you look at it, but I share sort of that mindset with if I had my own way, everything would kind of be organic. I would just be generating my own thoughts and ideas, but I also understand that that's just not necessarily the brain works all the time. But okay, so just to recap, my 6 creative idea generation tips and content creation tips would be: 1, my own work. Look back on your own body of work. Find areas where you could improve upon some of the work that you already have. 2, social media. Again, love it or hate it, people are producing and creating and publishing amazing work all the time. Use that at your discretion to find some creative inspirations. Number 3, tutorials. You could even make tutorials and get some creative inspirations from that. But, consume tutorials, watch other creators, see what they're doing, and pick and choose some of the things that they're providing you, and add those tools to your arsenal. Number 4, make sure always be adding ideas and thoughts and things to a running list, whether it be on your phone, whether it be in a notebook, whether it be, as Robert said earlier, in a drawer, a dedicated drawer in his desk, whatever it may be. Collect those ideas and then, leave a reminder to yourself to revisit them often and draw some inspiration from that. Number, 5? Start thinking like a videographer or like a photographer. Be observant of the world. Be observant of what's happening around you. Be observant of how you interact with things. And ideas can oftentimes come from that. And finally, start practicing some mindfulness practices of some kind. Again, whether that be just going on a walk, whether that be writing in a journal, whether that be meditation, whatever it may be. But give yourself some time to sort of just be one with your thoughts and allow your brain to do what it wants to do. And when you're bored, that's when the ideas start to come. It's almost like your brain's freaking out, like, we got to do something. What about this? What about that? And then these ideas pop in your head. So allow that to happen every now and then, and you will thank yourself for it. But those are my 6 tips. And if you are still with me and if you enjoyed what you saw or heard, please hit that subscribe button wherever you happen to be watching or listening, and follow me on social media at Ryan Hafey on Instagram and Twitter. Feel free to swing by, say hello, ask a question, whatever it may be. But for now, I'm going to go ahead and call this one done. Thank you to everyone who watched and left a comment today. I appreciate you. Had a good time with this one. Again, no outro yet either, so we're just going to have to end this one and say goodbye. I appreciate you all. Have a wonderful day. Bye-bye.